Mexico, and Flagstaff, Arizona. This is a police sketch of the suspect in one of the nastiest murder cases New York police have had come their way in a long time. The killer police are looking for is called the .44 caliber killer because of the weapon he has used. Robert Hager reports.
In a neighborhood of the Bronx called Pelham Bay and in Forest Hills near the famous tennis club, the killer has struck 6 times since last summer, and 5 are dead. Most of them pretty young women, shot at close range on the sidewalk or in parked cars. 18-year-old Donna Lauria was the first, killed last July. Then Christina Freund, 26, a secretary, killed in January. Virginia Voskarician, a 20-year-old co-ed, killed in March. And Valentina Suriani, 20, killed with her boyfriend, Alexander Esau, in April. In each case, the killer used a gun similar to this, a modern version of the old .44 caliber pistol used in the days of the Wild West. The killer has taunted authorities by writing 2 letters. Police are convinced the letters are real. Both were signed Son of Sam. One was left for police, the other was sent to Jimmy Breslin, a widely read columnist for the New York Daily News. This is a photocopy of the letter sent to Breslin. Here the killer says, "Mr. Breslin, sir, don't think that because you haven't heard from me for a while that I went to sleep. No, rather I am still here, like a spirit roaming the night, thirsty, hungry, seldom stopping to rest, anxious to please Sam. I love my work. Now the void has been filled."
The letter was very eerie. I mean, then you know that he read something that you wrote, and that somewhere out there he's reading again what you wrote. And it's one of those crimes has been, I guess, man has been visited upon man throughout the ages. The demented killer, and you don't know how to stop him.
At the end of the letter, the killer wrote, "Not knowing what the future holds, I shall say farewell, and I will see you at the next job. Or should I say, you will see my handiwork at the next job. Remember, Ms. Lauria," a reference to the first victim, "thank you." Then, before adding some footnotes, he signed, "In their blood and from the gutter, Sam's Creation, 44. The New York Police Department's Dr. Harvey Schlossberg, one of the nation's better-known criminal psychologists, believes the killer has sexual inadequacies. As for the references to Sam,
the way I see the relationship to Sam as the creator, as the driving force, as the hungry that can't be satisfied, I see the gun as Sam. Sam is the weapon which becomes the substitute phallic symbol.
On the envelope of the letter, the killer has drawn a sign, including the biological marks for male and female, and the letter S. The symbol only adds to the mystery of all this. So far, police say they're not even close to solving the case of the .44 caliber killer. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
In Israel today, Menachem Begin finally put together his government.
In New York, the search continues for the .44 caliber killer who has come to be known as the Son of Sam, the object of one of the biggest manhunts in this city's history. In the past year, the killer, believed to be a young man, has killed 5 people and wounded 4. His victims, mostly young women with shoulder-length dark hair, usually shot at very close range while sitting in parked cars at night. They've been shot with a .44 caliber bulldog revolver, an especially deadly weapon. NBC News correspondent Robert Hager has been following the case. He's with us this morning with the Chief of Detectives for New York City, John L. Keenan, and Dr. Harvey Schlossberg, Director of the Department's Psychological Services. Bob, why don't you bring us up to date on just what's going on in the case right now?
Thank you, Tom. The case has been one that's not only attracted a lot of public attention here, but also caused a lot of genuine fear in the communities involved. The police are trying to do all they can about the case, and we've prepared a report on that.
This is headquarters for one of the most intense manhunts in the history of New York, a search for the .44 caliber killer. Operating out of this office, over 50 of the city's best detectives pore over clues and run down leads.
All right, so he saw the composite and he may know the identity. Okay, he states that this informant has been reliable in the past, huh?
On the wall are snapshots of the victims, most of them pretty girls with long, dark hair. And photos of the murder scenes, the parked cars and lonely sidewalks where the killer has struck in post-midnight hours. Here, too, police are trying to trace the ownership of every snub-nosed .44 in the country, an estimated 28,000 guns. By night, police saturate neighborhoods where the killer has struck. Disguised as regular neighborhood toughs, they cruise in unmarked cars and check people who are still out long after midnight.
How you doing? Police officers? Nope. You have some ID, maybe?
Yeah.
On this night, there was a brief chase after a report of a driver acting suspiciously, trying to evade police. Within moments, the driver was surrounded by a half-dozen unmarked police cars and a dozen officers. The man was ordered from the car and questioned. Officers searched through the trunk until, satisfied, they told the man he could go, leaving with this explanation.
Man, it's everybody. It's not you, it's everybody. That's all we're trying to do. Nobody wants to embarrass you for nothing, okay?
Fine, I'll take that from what it's worth, and I agree.
We have to do our job this way. It's tough. We never did it this way. We got to do it this way now.
And I understand.
Okay?
Fine.
It was another false alarm in a case that's produced hundreds of false alarms, but each has to be checked out in the hope that the .44 caliber killer can be stopped before he strikes again.
Well, the .44 killer still is at large. John Keenan, who is the chief of New York City Police Detectives, it was July 29th, 1976 that he first struck. How much closer are you to apprehending Son of Sam these days, or is he just totally an elusive character?
He's still an elusive character, but in the sense that we have a large force of detectives doing an investigation on the case, and in the sense that we're getting a lot of information and bits and leads from the public, all of which are being tracked down and either being eliminated, or if it's interesting enough, we continue with that particular piece of information and investigating it. We feel that we're making ground, we're covering ground, and we're making progress in the case.
Do you have any good leads, Chief Keenan? Any particular people under surveillance, or ones that you feel where you could be getting close?
Since we organized the task force, we have received about 2,800 complaints, not complaints, but bits of information, telephone calls, letters and visits from people. Many of these, of course, were discarded after initial investigation, but a number of those pieces of information are still interesting enough to us to keep working on the particular person involved, so that I would hesitate to characterize these people as suspects, but there are a number of people who we are still interested in, and we are keeping tabs on them.
Dr. Schlossberg, Son of Sam has emerged in recent weeks to write letters to both the police department and or to leave at least a note at the scene of one of his crimes, and to write a letter to columnist Jimmy Breslin. What kind of a psychological profile have you been able to come up with?
Well, I think the leaving of letters in and of itself is kind of a switch. I think at this point his original reason for committing the crimes has changed. I think now he's into the kind of enjoying the publicity aspect of this. I see it as a kind of a becoming a cat and mouse thing. In a sense, he visualizes himself the Moriarty of the day, outsmarting the police, leaving them clues, and the police can't get anywhere. And so the game has kind of changed for him. In a sense, it's kind of a secondary gain now. Originally, the pleasure was in the killing. The pleasure now is in the outsmarting of the police.
Dr. Schlossberg, what sort of a man do you think you're going to find when and if you find and arrest this fellow?
Well, I think contrary to what most people believe, you're not going to find anybody with red eyes foaming at the mouth. You're going to find a very normal-looking, functioning individual that has these periods. I guess we kind of call them transient breaks. It's kind of like a pressure cooker. He goes along fine, functioning normal, obviously not calling attention to himself when the pressure just gets too much and he kind of flips his lid for that period of time.
So he's a schizophrenic of some kind, because he describes himself as son of Sam, and he says Sam has a great thirst for blood and so on, as if there's another figure at work in his life.
Well, again, I think popular belief is that someplace there's a little old man named Sam who's directing this operation. My feeling is that somehow Sam perhaps symbolically stands for the revolver. This is the thing that can't be satisfied. No matter how many times it discharges, the level of tension remains the same.
Chief Keenan, what do you know about the way this man operates? Do you feel he selects his victims in advance, or how does he go about his?
We don't believe he selects the victims in advance. The way he operates is apparently he prowls by car. He roams the neighborhood by car, and when he sees a likely target, gets out and stalks them by foot. He is, if the couple, generally is shot at couples sitting in parked cars, and he approaches the car from the rear and shoots through the window. On several occasions, he's approached a person on foot, asked directions, and then shot at close range. The last shooting, as you know, occurred outside a discotheque, which is a likely place for couples to come out of. It's quite possible that he is looking at these locations to select targets.
Dr. Schlossberg raised the possibility that he's now engaged in some kind of a public game of cat and mouse with the police department. Do you think that the extraordinary amount of attention that this case has been getting, and with good reason has been getting attention, because he has become a great threat to public safety of people in Queens and in the Bronx especially, do you think that that has helped or hindered your case? After all, it has kind of smoked him out.
I think the publicity has been helpful. If we think in terms alone of the number of bits of information and tips we get from the public, many of them are very interesting, telling us about people who are members of their family or people that are acquaintances of theirs who may fit this description. These things we wouldn't have gotten without publicity. We got well over 900 calls and letters since June 26th, last week.
You had a theory before about the publicity and whether it...
I think the publicity is beneficial in a sense that it may give him this substitute. I would personally prefer he gets his gratification through the press rather than having to kill. And I think this, he can make this substitute successfully. Dropping letters is better than shooting people.
Gentlemen, thank you very much, and we wish you, of course, the best of luck in this case that goes on now. It's time for a station break.
The walkout. A killer who has roamed the boroughs of New York for the past year struck again over the past weekend. He critically wounded a young couple as they sat in their automobile early Sunday in Brooklyn. Here's Robert Hager with the details.
The killer's 8th attack in just over 12 months came on this lonely street in Brooklyn. Police poured over the car where the young couple was shot and said fragments of bullets showed they were fired from the same .44 caliber pistol that had wounded 6 other New Yorkers and left 5 dead. Aided by light from a full moon, 3 or 4 eyewitnesses said they got a look at the killer. They described him as 25 to 35 years old, about 5'8" or a little taller. The victims were 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz, wounded critically by a shot in the head, and her date, Robert Violante, also hit in the head. Doctors said he was blinded in one eye. Relatives and friends kept a vigil at the hospital. Anthony Robinson was a friend of Miss Moskowitz.
She was a wonderful person. And she's always thinking of others.
She worried about this guy?
Excuse me?
She
wasn't worried, you know, because she says, you know, I got blonde hair and, you know. I told her, I don't know how many times, to be careful.
Then Robinson addressed the gunman.
First of all, you're sick. You're crazy. You're going around shooting the wrong people.
The investigation goes on, but police aren't sure they're any closer to finding the gunman terrorizing this city. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
Yitzhak Rabin, until a couple of months ago, the Prime Minister of Israel.
jury selection begins. Bob Jimenez, NBC News, Dawson, Georgia.
In the past year, a psychopathic gunman has killed 6 people and wounded 8 others in New York City. He calls himself, and he looks like this, he calls himself Son of Sam, and he is known as the .44 caliber killer because he has always used that kind of handgun. The latest of the killer's victims, a young woman, died tonight in a hospital in New York. Her escort, who got a good look at the gunman, may lose his sight. And the police now know that the killer could strike again, anywhere in New York City, and not just in 2 boroughs as in the past. Robert Hager is on the story.
As the condition of one of the killer's latest 2 victims worsened, the parents of Stacy Moskowitz were summoned to the hospital. This evening, Miss Moskowitz, shown here as she was taken into the hospital yesterday, died of massive brain damage. Her date, Robert Violante, will live. He said he got a good look at the killer, but may never be able to identify him because Violante may have been blinded. New York's Mayor Beam directed that 100 more policemen be added to what's become one of the biggest manhunts in the history of this city.
This would, in essence, put approximately a total of 300 of police personnel on a constant full-time basis just for this investigation.
In Brooklyn, where the latest shooting occurred, detectives drew diagrams of the area and places where people may have caught a glimpse of the killer escaping. Other detectives canvassed door to door, looking for new witnesses or re-interviewing ones they'd already talked to.
According to the witnesses that we've talked to over the past 24 hours, he's a male white, 25 to 35, approximately 5'7" to 5'10", a stocky build, and he had light disheveled hair.
But police still have nothing they'd be willing to describe as a hot lead in the case. In fact, they've been able to rule out about a half-dozen suspects they had previously because all were accounted for and none were in the area of the shooting early Sunday morning. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
The Congressional Conference Committee in Washington wrestling with the big...
It's now 8 minutes and a few seconds after the hour. The .44 caliber killer on the loose in New York for a year and 3 days has claimed another victim, his 6th, the young lady he wounded early Sunday morning. The girl and her boyfriend were sitting in a car in Brooklyn where they were attacked. She died yesterday in a hospital. Robert Hager has the rest of the story.
Stacy Moskowitz, a pretty 20-year-old blonde, became the 6th to die in the killer's string of attacks. At the hospital, her father was stunned.
I still tell you, that's something very dear to me. Great kid.
Miss Moskowitz died of massive brain damage. Her mother referred to that.
And she would have been a vegetable had she lived. And my daughter loved life too much. And she would never have wanted it that way. And she lived with dignity, and she died with dignity. But most important, of the people, that an animal should snuff away a life of a young girl, blind a young boy, and has killed others and will probably go on killing. An animal like this has to be caught.
At the scene of the shooting, detectives plotted the area, charting places where witnesses could have seen the killer escape. Other detectives canvassed door to door, looking for eyewitnesses, re-interviewing people they'd talked to before. New York's Mayor Beam announced 100 additional police will be assigned to the case.
This would, in essence, put approximately a total of 300 of police personnel on a constant full-time basis just for this investigation.
But police say they still don't have anything they'd describe as a hot lead in the case. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
There are reports this morning that George Wallace, the governor of Alabama,
The vote was mainly party line, and later the committee approved the bill supported by the president. In New York City, the .44 caliber killer is still at large. The police are no closer than ever to catching the madman who has killed 6 people and wounded 7. Here is Robert Hager with the latest details.
Residential areas all over New York are deserted after midnight now. Fear is spreading as the killer moves into different neighborhoods. By day, it's common to see young women with kerchiefs over their hair or hair pinned up because most of the victims had long hair. Discotheques are losing business. Young people are afraid the killer may select his victims at these places. The most recent attack was early Sunday. The father of Robert Violante, wounded in that attack, has now told his son he may be blind.
I gave him the news about his eyes yesterday, and he accepted it. He accepted it like a man. Bob, my son Robert, is more of a man than I could ever be.
The mother of Stacy Moskowitz, who died yesterday, issued this appeal to the killer.
Stop, please stop. Let the young live. Just stop it. Just stop this madness. He's doing nothing but just hurting innocent people. And I'm not talking about the parents now, I'm talking about the children.
Police said today they had no new clues. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
For months at Suburban General Hospital in Norris.
That important?
It's that important.
Stacy Moskowitz was buried today, the latest victim of the .44 caliber killer who has terrorized parts of New York for the last year or so. She and her date were shot on Sunday as they sat in a car late at night, just as the 5 other victims of the maniac were killed. Her date is still in the hospital. And in the neighborhoods where most of the killings have taken place, both the police and the citizens are stepping up the search. Robert Hager has that story.
It's after midnight last night. Police Sergeant Pete Dreyer and his partner Frank Farrell, both in plain clothes, check out a man who was cruising through the neighborhood alone. As the man leaves his car, the light reflects off a revolver on the man's hip.
You got a permit?
The man has a permit. He says he's an off-duty private detective. But Sergeant Dreyer has questions.
You always carry your gun off duty?
Yes, I carry permit.
Don't you own any other guns?
It's on the downtown Manhattan.
What type of gun is that?
The 38.
38?
It's regular service revolver.
You don't happen to know anybody carrying a 44, do you?
Hey.
The man doesn't know anyone with a .44. He's free to go. Other officers cruise the neighborhood in uniform, part of a small army of police assigned to watch for the killer here in the Pelham Bay neighborhood where he struck twice, and in other neighborhoods throughout the city. Neighbors here have also grouped together to ride the streets at night looking for the killer. Among those who patrol is Michael Lauria, whose 18-year-old daughter was killed last summer in the gunman's first known attack.
I want to see this guy caught. I fear if I'm out patrolling one night, I may spot him. I know what goes on in my heart. I know how I feel. How could I say it? I want this guy caught.
The Civic Association riders cruise in well-marked cars. Phil Vasquez, a teacher, would like to catch the killer for the sake of the Lauria girl's father.
I would like to go up to him and tell him, I caught him for you, and for all the other families.
Up the street, Sergeant Dreyer and his partner Farrell are back in their car, which is painted to look like a taxi cab. The sergeant is a little apprehensive about the Civic Association riders.
But I don't think it's just these particular. I think any group of concerned citizens, some of the most well-meaning citizens that you'd come across, I think if they got their hands on this guy, they'd be looking to string him right up on the spot.
At the Civic Association office, the CB radio is busy now.
Yeah, Reggie, underneath the Westchester Avenue, near Middletown Road, there's a guy sitting on the street there.
Police, tipped by the Civic Association, pick up a mental patient who's left a state hospital nearby. 4 Civic Association cars were there ahead of the police. Now, policemen Dreyer and Farrell are chasing a suspicious car.
If we're going to get this guy, we got to get the jump on every call.
The speedometer hits 90. The neighborhood sleeps, unaware of the chase. But the man Dreyer and Farrell were chasing turns out to be nothing more than a speeder.
You just managed to go through our homicide zone. We're working on that 44 caliber thing.
Yeah, but I got my brother, you know.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot.
Just slow it down.
All right, thanks.
Nice and slow.
Another routine night is ending for police and angry neighbors throughout the city, and the killer is still at large. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
And that's it for this evening. Good night for NBC News. 71, and would go off after public hearings if the Congress does not object. In New York City today, the police department made public its newest idea of what the .44 caliber killer looks like. In little more than a year, the gunman has killed 6 people, wounded 7. Robert Hager has more on what the police now think the gunman looks like.
Detectives released the artist's new conception to reporters at midday, both a profile and a full-faced view. It's a lot different from previous sketches, but police say witnesses of the killer's most recent attack got a much better look at the gunman. The face is a little leaner than in past drawings. The hair is dark and wavy, the cheekbones are high, and the eyes almond-shaped. The sketch was drawn by police artist William McCormick, whose sketches have helped to solve more than a dozen other murder cases here. McCormick showed hundreds of mugshots to the witnesses, asking them to pick out characteristics that reminded them of the gunman. He says the sketch isn't meant to be an exact likeness, but a general representation.
All we have here is a fellow with wavy hair, dark wavy hair. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. It could be dark brown. No sideburns. Definite eye-line shape here, eyebrow shape. Eyes set back, but not really deep. High cheekbones. Fairly straight nose. A bow-shaped mouth. And a fairly, not a very strong chin, but a reasonably average chin.
Late in the day, the sketch was delivered to policemen all over the city. The public got its first look, and police hoped all this might help. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
My dentures were so dense.
Have details of his arrest, and I think we should go immediately to him. I'm Jane Pauley with Lloyd Dobbins, but first, Floyd Kalber, the news of the arrest of suspect David Berkowitz.
Jane, the man's name is David Berkowitz. He is an unmarried 24-year-old postal worker. He's a veteran of Korean service with the United States Army. When he was arrested late last night in his apartment in Yonkers, New York, he told the officers, "Okay, you've got me." David Berkowitz is expected to be booked, as Jane mentioned, in Brooklyn this morning and formally accused of committing at least one of 6 murders in the New York area in just the past year. Specifically, they expect him to be booked for the murder of 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz on July the 31st. In the end, a parking ticket proved to be the undoing for Berkowitz. Here's Robert Hager with more of the story.
This is the man police believe to be the son of Sam, the .44 caliber killer who has killed 6 and wounded 7 in a string of attacks over the last 13 months. He was arrested outside his apartment in Yonkers, New York at 10:30 last night and brought to police headquarters about midnight. He is David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker who lived alone. He was smiling as he was brought in. Detectives displayed a .44 caliber pistol found in Berkowitz's car. The police lab says its tests indicate this was the gun used in the most recent Son of Sam slaying.
Ballistics section has just called and told us that the .44 caliber gun recovered tonight has been tested, and the bullets match the bullets recovered from Stacy Moskowitz.
New York's Mayor Beam appeared after midnight.
I'm very pleased to announce that the people of the city of New York can rest easy this morning because of the fact that the police have captured a man whom they believe to be the son of Sam.
It was Berkowitz's car that led police to him. It had been ticketed for being parked by a fire hydrant on the night of the most recent murder, just a few blocks from the murder scene. Routinely following up the ticket, police found the car in Yonkers and noticed a .45 caliber machine gun inside and an envelope addressed in the killer's style of handwriting.
He was apprehended. He was advised of his rights.
And he resisted.
Advised that he was under arrest, advised of his rights. No, he was resigned to what appeared to be his fate.
Did he make any admissions?
He made a statement along, well, you got me.
Besides the .44 pistol and the .45 machine gun, police seized a lot of ammunition at Berkowitz's apartment, along with a folder of press clippings with a poem written on the outside. The suspect doesn't bear much resemblance to any of the recent artist conceptions used by police, but one sketch drawn over a year ago does bear some resemblance to this Polaroid picture taken of the suspect on this night of his arrest. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
Again, David Berkowitz, accused this morning by the New York City authorities as the .44 caliber killer. He was arrested late last night in Yonkers, a community about 10 miles to the north of Manhattan. Carol Jenkins went there to talk to the people who lived around Berkowitz.
Moving with him.
Well, we've had some sort of difficulty with that report, and we hope to get it to you a little bit later on. Queen Elizabeth continues her visit of Northern Ireland. We will have that story and other news coming up.
NBC News in Israel.
Again, the top news story of this morning is the arrest late last night of 24-year-old David Berkowitz, an unmarried postal worker. He was arrested in his Yonkers, New York apartment, and he is expected to be booked and arraigned this morning in connection with 6 murders in the New York City area over the past year, the so-called .44 caliber killer. We asked Carol Jenkins, one of our reporters, to go to Yonkers to talk to some of the people he lived around and with.
It was well after 3 o'clock when New York City police walked out with what they would only describe as ballistics evidence. Among other things, they had found a .44 caliber revolver, a .45 caliber machine gun, a rifle, and newspaper clippings of the Son of Sam murders.
There's very limited amount of furnishings in the apartment. There was just a bed that was on the floor. There's no bedpost. Limited.
A mattress on the floor?
Yeah, mattress on the floor.
Any other furniture?
Just ordinary kitchen furniture. There's nothing really spectacular.
Personal effects, family
All
pictures?
All personal effects, family pictures, pictures of friends, I imagine.
35 Pine Street in Yonkers, a nice building in a nice neighborhood. Apartment 7E was home to David Berkowitz. No one here really knew him, although almost everyone knew who he was. A white man living in a mostly black building. Quiet, perhaps a little strange, but certainly not murderous.
You saw him? You knew him?
Yes, he was nice. He was a nice man. He always said hello and how were you doing and everything. I would never think that he was the Son of Sam.
Did you see when they came in to get him?
Yes, I did. I seen him drive up.
You saw him drive up in his car?
Yes, in a yellow car.
Right.
He drove up, and when he parked, the police, all of them jumped out of the car. They were coming from every direction. They jumped out of the car, and they ran over to him, and they put their guns up to him. They put them up to his head. And
what did he say?
He didn't say anything.
Across the street, there was fear.
Oh, I'm shocked, really. I can't believe that, it happened. He could be here in this neighborhood. I mean, so, the building's supposed to be a high-class building here, and, I mean, to think that we thought he was in New York.
And not
in Yonkers, and not right across the street from us.
And so it all seems to fit the image most often offered of the .44 caliber killer. A loner, a man nobody really seemed to know, at least not his neighbors here in Yonkers. They thought they were safe. After all, his target seemed to be the Bronx, Queens, and then Brooklyn. Well, now they are afraid when the rest of New York City and the rest of the country is beginning to relax. The people here in this building are afraid. After all, they live next door to the Son of Sam. In Yonkers, this is Carol Jenkins, NBC News.
And that's the news, 13 and a half minutes after the hour. Let's get the weather now from Lou Wood. Good morning.
Well, the big news in New York overnight, a man police are pretty sure his Son of Sam was arrested in his home in Yonkers and is in police custody now. Perhaps by this hour has in fact been arraigned in Brooklyn. With us this morning is Jimmy Breslin, the New York Daily News reporter and columnist, who was the only journalist to have received a letter from Son of Sam. That came last May, and Mr. Breslin has been deeply involved in the story as a reporter and as a novelist since then, along with our own NBC correspondent, Dick Schaap, who with Mr. Breslin is working on that book. Both of them have been up since the wee hours of this morning following the story, following the arrest of David Berkowitz, who has been identified tentatively as Son of Sam. First of all, this David Berkowitz has been talking to police. Has there been any indication that he was planning yet another attack?
Oh, yeah. Last night. Last night, standing in the hallway, as Dick was and I was, and the detectives would come out and talk to assistant district attorneys that questioned him, said he was going to, from his house in Yonkers to the Riverdale section of the Bronx, and he was going to do something there. This Sam had commanded him to do it, Sam being apparently a dog that runs his life, and Sam had commanded him to kill there. Then he was going out to the Hamptons, to a discotheque, and going downstairs with his, going into the place with a machine gun. And he was going to try and go out in a blaze of glory. And I mean, now you're talking, when a fella comes out and tells you a thing like that, you know, you sway.
There's an awful, you said an awful lot. First of all, he was arrested at what, 10:30, which is maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before the time he has chosen to strike in the past. And in his car was found a fully loaded .44.
Yep.
And a submachine gun?
Yeah, with 2 clips.
Submachine gun with plenty of clips.
And it was well loaded too. So he was changing his, how do you say, MO, so to speak. He was going to go out
in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, he wanted to take 40 or 50 people out last night.
He was talking about.
Has he told police that this would have been his last? He would assume after a massive attack like that to have been caught?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think he would want to go on. I mean, hopefully he would want to go on.
Well, tell me more about this Sam. Sam is a dog?
That's what he said. He said they said to him, so who's Sam? And he said, you know who he is. He said, no, come on, I don't know who he is. Who is Sam? He says, you know who Sam is. No, who is he? And Sam's a dog. And the dog tells, I understand the dog, and he can do everything, and he commands me to do things. Well, that's what they told me.
What I heard was just slightly different, was that Sam is a 6,000-year-old something who's almost human, and he talks to him through his dog. It's Sam's dog that tells him what Sam wants. And but he tells you all of this in a very rational, straightforward tone, like, you know, yesterday I went to the grocery and I got 3 boxes of whatever. So this dog talks to me and tells me and gives me a message when I must go out and kill. And he said he has nothing personal against these people, nothing against women. He thinks women are fine, and just that he has to do whatever Sam's dog told him to do.
The attacks then are specified by the dog, but the victims were pretty random?
Absolutely random.
Yeah, there was one in Forest Hills. The college girl was coming home from the subway, and he shot her, but he passed 2 people. He passed 2 people. He didn't shoot them because he was commanded only to shoot her. They said.
Not only
this was some piece of work you walk in the streets here.
When they arrested him, not only did he have the submachine gun in the car and the .44 caliber revolver, but he also had another poem that he had written, which was going to be left for the Suffolk Police Department in Suffolk County, where the Hamptons, where he was going to strike it. And the poem said, because Craig is Craig, so must the streets be filled with Craig. And then after Craig, in parentheses, it said death, Craig meaning death. And then it went on to say, and big drops of lead poured down on her head till she was dead. Yet the cats still come out to mate, and the sparrows still sing in the morning. Which is some very pretty imagery there in the last part of it. And Craig is a man who lives in the same building with him, who's a deputy sheriff of the city of Yonkers, and a man with whom he had been feuding. So,
I like the one thing. I was coming up here in a cab from police headquarters. I'm looking out on the streets, empty, nice morning starting. I was thinking, there's a great deal of talk in this city about illegal aliens in this country. Everybody's they're very bad. We can't have them here. Well, it happens, there was a woman in Brooklyn, 52-year-old woman, was out the night that this fellow, this deranged fellow, Son of Sam, had shot the last 2 people, Stacy Moskowitz, her name was, and her boyfriend. And she had seen the car parked and remembered it had a parking ticket. in the car. And when she told police what she had seen a fellow that night, and she remembered the car and the parking ticket in the car. The parking ticket, it was bingo. That was what they came up with. Now, the cameraman, I understood, cameraman was sitting on her stoop last night waiting to get out of, and she won't come out of the house because she's an illegal alien. She's here with no papers or something. I guess she came here for a visit from Europe, 2-week visa, something, 5 years ago, and stayed here.
Isn't that
now she's afraid they're going to catch her and throw her out of the country.
But isn't that the way it always goes? Incredible police work in the hunt for Sam, and he's picked up on a parking ticket for parking a car in front of
They were doing all that work, though. You've got to give them that.
Oh, sure.
The checking, the constant checking was being done on tickets, on cars, on fingerprints. They had done a tremendous amount of the terrible, tedious office work that, you know, that you don't see on the television. On television, they all come up with the car, squealing, and they jump out, Lieutenant, bang, 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 it's all over. How do you really solve it? Here's one of the worst murderers the world's ever seen. How do you solve it? You go through files looking for license plates.
What do you know about him other than what we know, the details, 24 years old, postal worker, name? Do you know more about him?
He was in the service. He was in Korea. He was not in combat. He did learn how to fire from the combat crouch. He went down to Houston, Texas to visit an Army buddy and bought the gun about 2 months before the first shooting. He bought the gun because it was in his price range. He could afford that or a 38, and he decided to buy the 44.
Machine gun, where in the world did it come from?
That I'm not sure. See, the machine gun has not committed any crimes other than its possession, so I guess they weren't as worried about the machine gun.
Are you surprised at the description of this young man? Does he fit what you might have had in your mind as who Sam must have been?
Yeah, when you looked at his car, saw the things in the car. Toothbrush, 2 pairs of shorts, some Lysol, water in a cranberry juice jar, 2 sneakers. The inside of his car it looked like the inside of his head, you know.
Chaotic. Thank you, Jimmy Breslin
Thank you.
and Dick
Pleasure.
Schaap for being with us this morning. And your story on the Son of Sam certainly isn't closed yet. You're reading New York Daily News. Stationery.
It's the Phillies against the Cubs or Seattle versus Boston Saturday. Check local listings.
David Berkowitz is the man who police think was Son of Sam, and he was arrested with a smile on his face. Why the smile? Why the clippings in his car? What was he collecting clippings for? Just a few of the questions.
I didn't see clippings there in the
car.
Well,
not in the car, but in his apartment. Apparently, there were the clippings. Well, apparently, I mean, he does not know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, at least that, you know, he doesn't at this moment.
He can't make a value judgment. Yeah, apparently. Everybody seems to say that.
He probably has no realization that he has done something, you know, horrendously wrong, and he's getting probably this great attention for the first time in his life, and he was sort of smiling because I guess he liked getting the attention that he had never gotten before. But I mean, there's going to be an awful lot of trying to figure out what set this off, what created this demon, this Sam who he invented, because he's going to sit there and talk rationally to an awful lot of psychologists.
What kind of questions were the police asking him last night? What were, say, the first 4 or 5 things they wanted to know out of Sam?
Why did you do it? Who was Sam? You know?
And I think those answers were surprising to, I mean, it wasn't quite what they expected. I mean, an awful lot was surprising.
Did he explain why Craig, his death, what that is?
He had set a fire in this fellow Craig's apartment at one time. The police in Yonkers knew about him as a guy who was, you know, a bit of a weirdo and cuckoo, but, you know, not homicidal. And so this Craig was a deputy sheriff there. He knew about him. He knew he was one of the cuckoos in the building. But like most buildings in New York, it probably had more than one cuckoo.
Had he ever mentioned Craig before in his letters
that
you know of?
No, that was no. And I mean, if he were going to leave that note, apparently this was the beginning of the end for him, because then the fella Craig would maybe put it together right away as to who this fella was. That's true. You know, that's why maybe this was going to be his, you know, that white heat scene, that Cagney, look at me, Ma, top of the world, he was going to go. You know, you still think, you're sitting here talking, you think the guy was going to go in a discotheque with a machine gun. I mean, my God, we were in terrible trouble with this fellow. Whew.
It's amazing, too, that there just doesn't seem to be any question. Of course, obviously, the man is innocent until proven guilty, but everything locks it up.
Why would he pick discotheques? He was
Young
24
people.
years old, and he's young,
Yeah,
and perhaps identifies with them. Maybe he had few friends, and that's where people collected and had fun and partied and whatnot.
I was looking at him. I was looking at him tonight. I was looking at him walk last night. I was looking at him walk, and I was looking at his face, a round, kind of pleasant face, a little goopy quality to it. But watch, I'm trying to see maybe, you know, could he dance, you know? And apparently he's got balance. He seemed balanced enough to dance. I don't know what his problem was.
Is he
why he'd go to discotheques? I don't know.
Is he the same man who would go to discotheques, pick out his victims at the discotheques?
No, apparently.
Or just roam the neighborhoods at night?
No, he roamed.
Yeah.
He roamed.
He hunted. The word he kept using was he hunted. And he hunted apparently 30 nights a month.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he only struck once every 40 days on the average, or 45 days, was just, you know, our good fortune, because he was out every night looking.
Looking back on it, was he in fact a sloppy killer, or was he covering his tracks really well? And the last one, he was standing under a street light, and a number of witnesses saw him.
He also said that he ran each time after the shooting. We had always thought all along that he walked.
Nobody had ever seen him run.
Nobody had ever seen anyone run.
I don't know, sloppy. He had a city in fear pretty good. And if he ever got through last night, he would have had a whole region in fear.
When are you going to talk to him?
I don't know, maybe I'll go to Kings County. That's the insane, you know, the mental hospital here. There's Kings County Mental Hospital, and maybe go in there and see him if he wants to see me.
He wrote you once?
Yeah, maybe he'll see me. Yeah, I'll talk.
Have you put in a request?
Yeah, I'll put one in.
With how many other reporters in the city of New York and elsewhere, I should think. Thank you again, Jerry
he'll
Presley,
see me.
Dick Schatt, and we'll see. Station break.
Fred Astaire and Petula Clark.
From the NBC News Center in New York.
Good evening. David Berkowitz, 24, spent his days sorting letters in the post office, so meek and mild and quiet, nobody ever noticed him, and spent his nights, the police say, roaming the streets of New York City with a .44 revolver, shooting young people and killing 6 of them. He has been arrested, and tonight he is in a mental hospital. He had terrorized the city for 13 months. When they brought him in, a crowd gathered on the sidewalk demanding his life. Here are 2 reports.
This is the man police say is the .44 caliber killer. Young, dark-haired, almost chubby. He had a faint smile as police moved him around the city today, from arrest to booking to court, finally to a mental ward. Police were jubilant.
44 caliber bulldog.
Just after midnight, about 2 hours after the arrest, they displayed the .44 caliber pistol they said they found in Berkowitz's car. They said lab tests indicated it was the gun used in the killings. They found a folder in Berkowitz's apartment with a poem written on it in handwriting that matched earlier letters from the killer. They found hundreds of rounds of ammunition and 2 more guns, including a .45 caliber machine gun detectives said Berkowitz planned to use in his next attack, which they said was planned for a Long Island discotheque. In the end, it was something as simple as this $25 parking ticket that led police to Berkowitz. Police had ticketed his car for parking too close to this fire hydrant, a block and a half from the most recent killing, on the same night as the killing, July 31st. A routine follow-up of the ticket led police to Berkowitz's car, parked in front of his Yonkers, New York apartment. And when police discovered the machine gun and a letter in the car, 15 detectives staked out the apartment and car. Chief of Detectives John Keenan tells what happened.
David Berkowitz came out of his apartment house, entered the car, was about to start the car when he was apprehended. He was advised of his rights.
And he resisted.
Advised that he was under arrest, advised of his rights. No, he was resigned to what appeared to be his fate, Did he make any admissions? He made a statement along, well, you got me. I want to be careful not to say anything which will prejudice a prosecution. So I'll just say that he made admissions.
For now, Berkowitz is formally charged for only the latest of the .44 caliber attacks. He's accused of second-degree murder, attempted murder, assault, and possession of a deadly weapon. In court for a brief arraignment, Berkowitz was surrounded by dozens of detectives and uniformed police. By now, his face was flushed and his eyes a little puffy, but there was still the trace of a smile. 2 lawyers said they'd been hired by relatives to defend him, and the judge ordered him committed for psychiatric examination. Tonight, Berkowitz is being held here in a specially secured building of the Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn to begin what could be up to 30 days of testing to determine his mental competency. It's the same hospital where Stacy Moskowitz died just 10 days ago. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
Following the arrest of David Berkowitz, neighbors in the Yonkers apartment building where he lived for the past year began to piece together their picture of the man police are calling the Son of Sam. What was your experience with Mr. Berkowitz?
I think he was a nice man. He always spoke to me, said hello, how you doing, how do you like the weather. He was very nice, kept to himself.
Did you know the Son of Sam or the man who policed her saying Son of Sam?
I've seen him in the elevator and in the building, up on the 7th floor. I live at the other end of the...
Ever speak to him?
Hello, goodbye, you know, good morning, good afternoon.
Was he pleasant?
Yeah, he would speak and go about his business.
Police said the articles found inside Berkowitz's apartment included a sleeping bag, the only furniture, some unframed art reproductions taped to the wall, and a scrapbook of Son of Sam newspaper clippings. Berkowitz's newspaper boy, 14-year-old Frank Resto, lives just across the hall. Did he resemble to you the sketch of Son of Sam, any of those sketches of Son of Sam that we all became so familiar with?
Nope. Didn't even look like him.
This is Co-op City in the Bronx, the nation's largest cooperative development, and David Berkowitz's home for the 7 years prior to his move to Yonkers. Berkowitz's grandmother, in her 80s now, still lives here. His mother is dead. His father lives in Florida, but when he heard of the charges against his son, he flew to New York today to be near him. The 24-year-old Son of Sam was adopted. He attended Columbus High School in the Bronx. It's closed for the summer, and no one who remembered Berkowitz was around today. Community College came next. It's also in the Bronx, and Berkowitz attended here for almost a year before dropping out, joining the Army, and going to Korea. Students told us that some teachers had retrieved some of Berkowitz's old schoolwork and were passing it around today, mostly poems. David Berkowitz landed a job operating a mail sorting machine at the Bronx post office a few months ago. Co-workers today were shocked to learn that Berkowitz could be the Son of Sam.
He first started working here about 6 months ago. The foreman told me to break him in and show him what to do on, processing the mail and the collection. And we worked together for about 2 or 3 months, and we sat and had coffee together. And he did a lot of, talking mostly about, he liked to go fishing, and he did a lot of reading, he liked to read, I think mostly novels, And the only thing he ever said about the Son of Sam was that he advised one girl to put her hair up in a bun, that she shouldn't wear long hair because that's what Son of Sam was after, girls with long hair.
So to Berkowitz's co-workers and friends and others, the man and his motivation remain a mystery. Gerald Harrington, NBC News, New York.
The thousands of policemen who were hunting for Berkowitz did not know that he had received training as an auxiliary New York City policeman, learning some law and some unarmed defense tactics. He learned about guns in the U.S. Army, where he served as a rifleman in the 2nd Infantry Division in Korea in 1971 and 72. Presumably now he won't use any more guns, and that pleases a lot of New Yorkers. Lee McCarthy has that part of the story.
New York began feeling relief at 1:30 this morning when Mayor Beam announced the arrest.
I'm very pleased to announce that the people of the city of New York can rest easy this morning because of the fact that the police have captured a man whom they believe to be the Son of Sam.
John Deal, whose girlfriend, Christine Freund, was murdered in January, said the arrest was good news for everybody.
I feel very
very good about it, that everybody can walk, you know, or go out with their dates safe again now. You know, some of us had to, you know, suffer through this.
At the Brooklyn home of Stacy Moskowitz, the last person murdered, her mother praised the police, but added that the family's life will never be the same.
It's a very difficult thing to resume anything normal afterward, as far as I'm concerned anyway. You just can't pick up nothing pieces when there's no pieces to pick up.
New Yorkers saw the arrest as a release for New York's young women and their parents.
I was getting a little worried since I have short length brown hair and everything. But now I feel much better.
Oh, I feel much safer walking the streets of New York. Much safer, you know, I can go out at night and go to the discotheques and just feel better about it. I don't have to worry that my parents were very worried that I couldn't go out at night. I was always home, went to sleep early.
I think it's great. Now I feel so much safer about going out at night.
I'm very happy. I have daughters.
So after almost a year of tension and fear, this city's young people and their parents are beginning to relax. Lee McCarthy, NBC News, New York.
This story got big headlines all over Europe and all over the world. In some London newspapers, the headlines were larger than the story of the Queen's dangerous visit to Northern Ireland. The Russians were a little behind the action, however. The government newspaper Izvestia came out today after the capture with a lengthy story explaining why the New York City police were unable to catch the killer.
1 ounce of Total gives you one.
On this Friday.
Taking the day off. Nice. Thank you, Jane. Good morning, everyone. David Berkowitz, the 24-year-old postal worker, alleged to be the night killer known as Son of Sam, is undergoing mental tests under heavy guard in a New York City hospital today. Berkowitz, who was captured late Wednesday night after a year-long police hunt, reportedly has confessed to the string of 6 murders and 7 assaults that terrorized the nation's biggest city. More on that story now from Lee McCarthy.
As news of the arrest of the .44 caliber killer spread, New Yorkers were generally relieved. But at the Brooklyn home of Robert Violante, who was blinded in the killer's last attack, Violante's mother said the arrest left one question unanswered.
All I know I would say to him would be one word: why? Just why?
As people talked about the case on the streets of Manhattan, young women and their parents were once again at ease.
Oh, I feel much safer walking the streets of New York. Much safer, you know, I can go out at night and go to the discotheques and just feel better about it. I don't have to worry that my parents were very worried that I couldn't go out at night. I was always home, went to sleep early.
I was getting a little worried since I have short length brown hair and everything. But now I feel much better.
I think it's great. Now I feel so much safer about going out at night.
It has been a tense, fear-filled year for New York's young women and their families. Now, things are getting back to normal. Lee McCarthy, NBC News, New York.
Berkowitz's court-appointed lawyer, Philip Peltz, spent several hours yesterday with the accused killer and described him as tired and subdued. Meantime, the .44 caliber Bulldog revolver found in Berkowitz's car has been traced to Houston, Texas. And we have more on that now from George Lewis.
Police say the gun used in the killings came from this pawn shop in Houston. It was bought last year by a local construction worker, Billy Dan Parker, a close friend of David Berkowitz. The people who run the pawn shop say they sell a lot of handguns, and they were surprised that one of their weapons was used in the Son of Sam killings.
I was watching the news before I come to work, and, you know, they were talking like I was really glad that they caught the killer, and then I was the one that answered the phone when, you know, the Treasury Department called about the gun, and, like, I was shocked. But, you know, you don't ever think about something like that coming from your hometown, much less your own store, you know.
What precautions do you use to make sure that the wrong kind of people don't buy guns?
Well, you just kind of question a person. Like, you might ask them, like, were you going to use the gun for home protection? Or usually most people don't buy a gun like that for home protection, though, because it's such a big bore. You know, a .44 caliber is a big pistol.
The pistol was purchased for $125. Billy Dan Parker, who refused to be interviewed on camera, told one reporter he bought the gun for Berkowitz because his friend feared he needed protection on the long drive from Houston to New York. Parker, who lives in this house with his parents, was away from home, in seclusion. This morning, New York authorities and agents from the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms plan to question him. George Lewis, NBC News, Houston.
In other news, Cuba's Fidel Castro says he's ready to let about 80
Hey, Frank, what's the format going to be? What are you gonna do?
Chief is going to describe the picture, and he will point out what he's talking about on the big sneak peek. Other than that, ask some questions. Dan, you're still going to be the last one to have the camera on. I mean, Mike.
Watch your foot, man. Just the right foot. Go ahead, John.
We are distributing today the new composite drawing of the 44 killer, provided based on descriptions provided by witnesses to the shooting on July 31st. The description is as follows: male, white, 25 to 32 years old, 5'8" to 5'9", 165 to 175 pounds, good athletic type build, clean shaven, dark almond-shaped eyes, dark wavy hair, sensuous mouth, high cheekbones. His clothing consisted of a blue denim jacket, a matching blue denim pants, slightly flared. A shirt was bluish gray Kiana with small kidney-shaped designs spaced 3 inches apart, and his shoes were blue denim deck shoes with narrow white band. This description was provided by, the composite was provided by one witness. The description was supplied by a number of witnesses. I would say this about the witnesses in case there are any questions. We are not going to identify the witnesses, nor are we going to describe what part they played in the events that night.
How would you describe the differences between the old sketches and this one?
Well, as you can probably see, there are differences, but we also see similarities between the old sketches and this one. If we discuss the differences, I might point out that the 3 witnesses who provided previous composites were, at the time that they saw the killer being shot at and under great strain, and saw him only briefly.
Chief Keenan, has the police department placed a firm lid on witnesses and victims, living victims of the .44 caliber killer in terms of press contact with them?
The victims have asked very strenuously that we preserve their confidentiality, the confidentiality of their identity. And we are going to honor that. They have been very cooperative, but they are very apprehensive about having their names exposed and
you mean the witnesses? And
being contacted. Yes.
Well, Chief, did you get in touch with all of the previous victims who are still alive in the preparation of this composite?
No, not in the preparation of the composite, but we're in the process of showing the composite to them to see that if this more accurately fits their description.
Well then, this composite sketch is based on the one witness?
This composite sketch is based on several witnesses to events which took place 10 days ago.
All right. Does this mean then that you are closer in terms of really identifying this man? I mean, have the witnesses who have come forward now really helped you?
We feel that this is a much better description of the individual looking for than we had before, based on the fact that there is an agreement among the people that we talked to concerning the events on July 31st, and because some of the people who helped provide the description were not under the stress of being victims.
Well, at one point there was some discussion about the fact that he may have worn a wig. Has that been discounted?
No, we are still considering the fact. In fact, we have a feeling that he did wear a wig at some point during the events on July 31st.
Is this composite with the wig on it all?
This is without the wig.
Chief King, does this composite look like any of the dozen or so persons who were suspects prior to the Brooklyn shooting?
I can't comment on that.
Is it true that prior to that Brooklyn shooting, the night that it happened, that one of the suspects who was being watched closely by the homicide task force was lost?
I won't comment on anything to do with the suspects that night.
Chief, can we assume then that this drawing is the definitive?
That's news to me, Jeff. I just take a position. I'm not going to comment on those people that we were looking at.
Well, just after the shooting, Commissioner Todd said something to the effect that most of the suspects that they had then were washed out because they were being watched, and they obviously were doing good. But there had also been reports that one of the suspects had shaken a tail, had been lost a couple of hours.
The people that we had most considered as likely suspects at that time are all accounted for.
Chief Keenan, is anyone under regular surveillance now? Are there any active potential suspects?
I can't comment on that.
Chief, these drawings, do we consider them the definitive drawings? I hate to use the word, but are the other drawings inoperative now? Or?
No, we have to take each event as a separate incident. This is the composite drawing of the people who observed this man on July 31st. The other drawings are the perceptions of the victims on 3 or 2 of the occasions on prior occasions.
But you're relying on this perception because they had a better look?
Yes, we feel that this is a better description of and a composite picture of the person.
Why did it take as long as it did to construct this composite? It seemed to me that every day it was going to be ready.
Number one, there were a number of witnesses involved who had to be spoken to. They were interviewed, they were re-interviewed. There was some reluctance on their part because of the pressure of and a desire on their part to preserve anonymity. There were improvements made on original sketches, and we feel this is about the best sketch that can be done.
What would you say to a person who might know this man and is afraid to come forward? If the witnesses are afraid to give you a description, what would you say to the person who might know this?
Well, I would simply appeal to them to come forward because despite what fears they may have, they have to consider the tragedy that has occurred and tragedies that may occur in the future.
Chief Keenan, are you now actively relying on the public for additional information which will take you to this man, or does the investigation now find itself with enough to go on by itself?
No, we're still looking for information, specific information from the public.
Chief, some of the previous witnesses really help you. Does this really help us here?
Quite obviously, we can't take that sketch and go out and pick out the person we're looking for. But it helps us in the sense that a person in the general public or some friend of his may be able to come forward and say, this looks like the man we're looking for.
Some of the previous witnesses spoke of dark, penetrating, striking eyes. Did any of the witnesses this time note that characteristic in the...
They didn't. Yes, that was indicated, but they didn't stress that. They stressed the way the eyes are described in the leaflet.
Hey, Chief, will you clear up this car, this Volkswagen? Is it in the picture, out of the picture? What's the status?
We have talked to a number of people who have told us about cars of various makes, colors, connected with events that night, including the Volkswagen. At this point, we are not prepared to connect that car or any car with the killer, but we're still investigating that. We attempted to characterize let me say this, we have not been able to characterize this composite with any particular nationality or race, and we have pursued that line with the witnesses.
You say no race, yet he's described as a white man. You say you haven't been able to characterize him as a member of the race, but he's described as
Yeah, definitely is a white man.
Do you think he may have Hispanic background?
We don't know.
And nothing that's come along in your investigation?
No, nothing indicates that he's Spanish or any particular nationality.
Chief, have you had any kind of new information? Where are you exactly with the investigation on Somerset? Is it something that you can tell us about?
Of course, we have a better description. We have more people this time who saw the killer than at any time in the past. We have some investigative aspects where we are pursuing, which I can't go into, and I feel that we're making progress.
Chief, what about the published report yesterday that Sam is a high school English teacher?
I have nothing in the investigation so far indicates that, or that he's a member of any occupation.
Chief, has any serious thought been given of men handling this investigation? Could possibly be two people who are the son of Sam, who know each other, who are working in concert?
No, there's no reason that we would have to conclude that.
None at all.
No.
What about the possibility of someone else driving?
We have nothing to substantiate that either. That there's anyone else associated with this man.
Commissioner, any more information on the psychological profile of Klein or motive?
No. We have
nothing on the psychological aspect.
Chief, do you have any information from airline stewardess who says the man was flight?
Yes, an airline stewardess on a flight to Fort Lauderdale on June 26th or 27th, I'm not sure which, said that there was a passenger on the flight, and as the passenger was leaving the plane at Fort Lauderdale, she discussed the headline in the paper, and she spoke to him about it, and he said seriously, yes, I did that, and left the plane. She now says, having seen the profiles recently in the papers, says that this looks like the man. We have interviewed her. We are still following that phase of the investigation.
That son of Sam may now be in Fort Lauderdale?
I don't know.
Has she seen this today?
He got off at Fort Lauderdale, and that was over a month ago.
Did she see the new sketch, or was she a...
No, she hasn't seen the new sketch yet. The new sketch is just being distributed today.
Was she helpful in describing Son of Sam for you and helping make this composite?
No, had nothing to do with this composite.
Will these sketches be sent down to Fort Lauderdale for this?
Yes, that will be done. You must remember that she is not a witness to a crime. She just saw a person who looks like the previous composite, and apparently he made some statement along those lines.
When this was?
June 26th, I think the evening of June 26th. We are checking into that. Oh yes, it's possible to live out in New York City or out of New York City.
Commissioner.
Yes, it is.
Commissioner.
Right, Riz. by virtue of some of the investigative leads we're pursuing.
Chief Keenan, at this point, do you believe that if the new composite were posted on billboards, large billboards in the city, that it might be of some help?
That's a possibility we can look into. It will be distributed, this flyer will be distributed to all members of the department, to other departments, other agencies, to groups such as taxi cab drivers and so forth, and we will hope to get the widest possible distribution.
Chief, do you believe that?
Our inclination is to feel that his target is women, or are women. He has shot both men and women, but invariably a woman has been in the picture, and in most cases the woman has been the person most seriously injured. So we are going along under the assumption that his target initially is a woman and the man happens to be dead.
All right, is it any?
That's quite possible, quite possible.
Are you still getting telephone warnings as you did before you the son of Sam?
Yes, we still get calls from people who say they're the son of Sam, and as a matter of fact, we arrested someone a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, who had called a number of times saying he was son of Sam. We were able to trace him and find him.
Do you have any way of knowing when the real son of Sam called on his phone? I mean, is there anything?
We have no voice identification. No. Yes, it will have the widest possible distribution.
Chief, it's also possible he has an experience of makeup. This is a possible without makeup. Because he could make up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to move over there and get a head on.
I think the media is very helpful in trying the public to
I have enough when I left the house.
Eddie?
I gotta wait until he's done.
Okay, you still want to take the light?
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot it. I was gonna shoot it. I don't know if anybody made it.
You cannot malign a brother or sister membership. Stop, because NBC issues a lot of stuff.
He's still there. He's still there.
Take that.
It's at our place right now.
I told that you last Saturday.
No, he's still there.
Well, that's in the story I heard.
Well, it's on the street.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Me too. I don't mind a guy working.
Hold on, another minute.
It's out of the way. What are you guys doing? Epic over there?
identification section.
Identification section.
Or M-I-C-K. M-A-C-K.
M-A-C.
The setup is no good.
Why does the, although,
Let Keenan answer that.
Are we ready to roll now? Is everybody ready? We're ready. All right, roll, please.
although they insist that he is male white, in your drawing there is a Latin cast to his face. Can you explain how that happens?
I only put down what the witness tells me to put down.
How was it working with this witness?
Working with these witnesses was a tough grind, so to speak.
Can you describe the process, please?
Exactly. This happened at night, not under the best of lighting conditions. And it's hard to get people to elicit what they've seen in the dark.
Can you describe the process for us? How do you get them to help you?
The process is basic that we use on all our interviews.
Tell us about that, please.
We show them a set of photographs, random photographs that we have. Actually, they're extra photographs, and they contain various shapes. And we ask them to go through and find out, or look at, and pick out the different features that they saw on the person that we're interested in.
How many times did you have to change basic features until you finally had the sketch?
Could be hundreds of changes.
Officer McCormick, how good are you? When, in the past, when a person has been arrested for a crime, how much do they look like your sketch?
We don't make an exact likeness of it. What we're trying to do is type him. In other words, the detective at the scene gets a report that this is a basic type of person he's looking for, and only basic in that it's height and weight and physical description. We try to put down a verbal, visual description.
In the past, have people who've been arrested ever looked like
Oh,
your
yes.
sketches?
There's a great variety in the five different sketches. Is there anything that you as the artist see as the similarity between, or
As I said before, I only put down what they tell me to put down. I can't inject what I feel, or any of my feelings.
How comfortable are you with this new sketch in terms of your awareness of the previous?
I feel with this sketch just like any other sketch that I've done. So, I mean, there's no comfortable feeling.
Can you give your version of what these witnesses said to you in combination? So in other words, what they said were the strongest impression they had of what this fellow looked like.
Basically, all the witnesses give the same, not only in this particular case, but in any case, they basically tell me his nose, his mouth, his eyes, there's nothing peculiar about this particular
But as the person who had to draw this, I mean, you must have an idea of what they said his face was shaped like, and what his eyes looked like, and what impressed them most about the fellow. And I'm wondering if you could translate that for us, put it in your words as an artist.
I still go back and say that I just finished an interview right now. And questions were the same type of questions I asked during any of my interviews, and the responses are not exactly the same, but in the same line.
In other words,
Now,
in this case, what was the most striking feature? What was the easiest thing for this witness to remember about the killer?
There was nothing easy.
Not one thing stood out in the killer's face?
If you're looking for a mark or a scar or a deformed eye, there's nothing like that.
Did they talk about dark, piercing eyes? Did they mention that?
That's an expression.
How much time went into this drawing?
I would say more than 4 hours.
Of actual drawing?
Actual drawing time.
How many changes did you
No, never keep track of the changes.
Bill, based on your experience, if the .44 caliber killer would be brought into this room right now, how close might he look to the sketch?
I don't know. This is only based on what the witness told me to put down.
How close have witnesses been in the past?
Very close.
Bill, if someone says he had very piercing eyes, he looked at me like a madman, that wouldn't be of any use to you?
No, because it's an expression used at that particular time.
What did the witness say when you showed them your completed sketch?
The only time a sketch is terminated is when the witness is satisfied with what he put down.
Was the witness satisfied completely?
I just answered your question.
Pardon?
I just answered your question.
Bill, you said that you started by showing photographs. What happens after?
We take the photographs and we take the parts that they have picked out and we put them down and make a preliminary sketch away from the witness. And then we call the person in and have them make changes. The words, we use the basic sketch as something to work from, going towards what they've seen.
How many has the theory of the wig been dismissed? If you have more than one witness, how do you?
Take the best witness.
You said take the best, you know, you make a judgment.
Have you experienced a lot of disagreements between various judges on this?
No, not in a particular sense.
You said there was no one thing that these people said to you that stood out. Can you at least say some of the things they said about?
Well, what's shown in the sketch right now that you have, I would say that speaks for itself.
Get it verbally, though, as to what they told you that led you to make the sketch that way, other than selecting the photographs, but just some of what they said to you about their idea of how this kind of looked.
I had to go back to what's shown in the sketch. This is what they've told me. And this is a composite of all the things that they've told me.
Bill, was the witness who helped you with this sketch under hypnosis at the time he was working with you?
No, they weren't. None of them were.
None of them.
Is there any way to explain to us why this profile does not look like the profile that this person?
You'd have to ask the witness.
What was different? What makes the difference? It doesn't, to several, it does not look like the profile of that person.
I don't know. I take a completely objective look at what I'm doing. In other words, if you told me to draw a line a certain way, I draw it a certain way. Not the way I want to draw it, but the way you want to draw it. And if one side looks different from the other side, that goes back to what the witnesses stated. In other words, I've just put down in a pictorial sense a statement by a witness.
How long did you work with? How long did you work with these witnesses or the witness that you used to make this composite?
Starting last Monday, week before Monday.
How many days did you work?
Until Friday.
All for 5 days?
And part of Monday morning, this past Monday morning.
What was the most difficult thing of the whole process?
There's no one particular difficulty. I think most of all of it is difficult.
Now, you've done this with in other crimes. Would you say that these witnesses were
no different than anybody else?
Not more traumatized, more afraid of?
There is a whole thing about it that you guys that I can go into, but not now. I would say that the witnesses I had were average witnesses. Why do they remember things and memory and things like that? Something.
Yeah. Bill, have you ever kept a scorecard as to when your drawings, as to how many have been contributed to the actual capture, and how many have not?
No, I rely on the people I work with to notify me.
I cut it.
Okay, yeah.
This kind of arrest was made.
You said that you go to your best witness when you have many witnesses. What do you do after you talk to the best witness? Then you go back to the other witnesses and for confirmation?
Right. We ask for confirmation based on what they showed.
I see. How do you determine who's your best witness?
From the detective who has the case. Basically, he will tell me who he feels is the best, and I get the best.
Bill, I have one more question, if you don't mind. Have your sketches in the past resulted in the apprehension of those?
Yes, they have.
Do you know how many instances?
The exact count, I don't remember. I can give you, I'd have to go down and look at my log and break them out. I'll look at this.
More than 50.
And he gives a name you might remember, something.
Well, shoot that camera, really. So,
one that stands out in my mind is Mr. The story written, looking for Mr. Good. That was a successful case that we used the sketches in. There were
no, I got it.
police shootings that we used the sketches in that added to the credibility of the witnesses that we had on hand.
Good, thanks.
Numerous rape cases that I know in the last 2 years.
Over a dozen times, was that just murder cases or was that all cases?
Oh,
You said over a dozen, I don't know if that's a good figure.
I'm going back over, let's say, maybe 1,500 reviews. Important ones. What I mean important ones is the ones that had some kind of notoriety in them.
But you said there's dozens.
Within the homicide.
And how many sketches do you? You said 1,500 interviews. That means you have 1,500 sketches.
Right.
1,500 sketches.
Just pass it.
Where do you spend?
High school, Like correspondence schools.
What high school was it, art high school?
Evening school. Seminars in the summertime.
Finish, Bobby? How old?
Yeah. 38 years.
Jerry. Hey man, put me on camera. I want to do the job. Hey, yo, put me on camera. Hey Jerry, hurt you? I cut you in white skin. That hurt you, man? Just soft for your tight skin. I don't make much noise though.
Stand still 1 second. Right, roll. Speed. You were the officer who put the ticket on the car.
No, it was my partner.
I'm not involved. You his partner?
No, Officer Catania put the summons on.
I know who you are now. Obviously, you can't tell us what's going on inside there. So that's the
No, I haven't been before the grand jury at the present time, and I don't wish to make any statements at this time.
The grand jury is currently hearing evidence in this matter. There are other witnesses that have to appear before the grand jury this afternoon, and we would prefer at this time not to make any comment upon their deliberations or the evidence that's going before the grand jury.
All right. I just wanted you to stand there. Give me a picture opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, you better look out. You better stay out of any picture.
Yeah.
Spade.
unless you were talking to him, unless you were talking to him direct, he wouldn't like bring up a conversation or anything.
We had heard different stories that this guy was quarrelsome at times with different people. You ever heard any stories like that? Or had he ever raised his voice?
Not here.
What's your name, if I could ask?
My name is Casey Ziegler.
Casey Ziegel? Casey, would it be all right for you? We're with Nightly News. We're trying to pull together just some reaction from people who worked around him. I know nobody really knew him well, but I'd like to talk to just a few people who know him. You know, knew of him at least. I'll ask you to spell Casey Ziegel to make sure I don't get that screwed up.
Right.
You want to give the wife a call, it's a good chance this will be on the NBC Nightly News.
I give right.
At about 7 o'clock here in New York City. You might be interested.
What channel is that?
Channel 4. What do you mean, what channel is that? Come on. Ready?
Go ahead.
Ziegel?
Yes.
Spell Casey Ziegel.
K-A-S-S-E-Z-E-G-E-L.
K-A-S-S-E-Z-E-G-E-L. Thank you. Mr. Ziegel, what kind of man was Mr. What's his name?
Mr. Berkowitz.
Berkowitz, I'm sorry. What? Please don't stand behind me there, babe. What kind of man was Mr. Berkowitz?
Mr. Berkowitz was a more or less of a quiet, reserved person. He seemed to be a good worker, did his job well. And nothing like the reports that I hear about him being quarrelsome or angry or anything.
What was your reaction? What was your reaction when you first heard that this guy was more than likely the son of Sam?
Well, last night I heard over the radio a report, and when they gave his name, it didn't jive until I heard that he was a postal employee, and I was just dumbfounded, speechless, because I had no suspicions whatsoever. No suspicions whatsoever.
What did he do did he do anything on the job that would lead you to believe a guy could have that sort of...
No arguments or temper or raising his voice or anything like that.
He worked well with people?
Yes, he seemed to work all right with people. It's.
You ever hear any complaints about him?
No.
So what's your, as you reflect on all of this now, what's your feeling?
It's just it's a sad, sad day. And I'm glad that they've got him, finally. It's just unfortunate. It's a sad day. Sad day. It's a terrible day.
Mr. Ziegel, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That. Yes, sir. Let me make one picture over your shoulder here, just in case we might need it. Just talk to me, please.
Right.
Look at him and just talk. Tell me one more. We're not recording. What do you think of this guy, son of Sam?
Oh, as I said, he was a quiet, reserved person. More or less kept to himself. It's just the whole thing is really shocking. It's speechless. It's sad. It's really sad.
All right. Thank you very much.
M-U-R-D-A-U-G-H.
D-A... Murdaugh.
Yeah.
Murdaugh. M-U-R-D-A-U-G-H.
Right.
Frank Murdaugh. Speed, please. We're on the other side, right, for the other dude?
Yeah, we're on the other side.
All right. Speed, please. I want to slate this. Huh? No, you can stand there if you want to. Then. You can't stand back there. You can't stand back there. Gerald Harrington speaking with Frank Elliott.
Mike Elliott.
Make that Mike Elliott. M-I-K-E-E-L-L-I-O-T. 2 T's. E-L-L-I-O-T-T.
Right.
Mike Elliott. 2 T's. 2 L's, 2 T's. Mike, how did you know...
Well, when he first started working here, it was about 6 months ago, the foreman told me to break him in and show him what to do on, processing the mail and the collection. And we worked together for about 2 or 3 months, and we sat and had coffee together. And he did a lot of talking mostly about he liked to go fishing, and he did a lot of reading. He liked to read. I think mostly novels, And the only thing he ever said about the son of Sam was that he advised one girl to put her hair up in a bun, that she shouldn't wear long hair because that's what son of Sam was after, girls with long hair, long brown hair. And that's about it.
He actually advised one of the girls he was working with that she should wear her hair up?
Right. He told her to wear her hair up, that Sam is going after girls with long hair, long brown hair. He told this to the girl. Her name is Teresa Graciano.
Did he ever say... Y'all gonna have to stand back, please, please. Did he ever say or do anything that led you to be a little suspicious, or at least wonder kind of where or what he's all about?
No, he never spoke about his time before the post office. He never did any talking about his home life or anything. The only thing he spoke about was his job. He says he hopes he could make it, you know, the training and everything, and that he likes working here in the post office. That's the only thing. You know.
What about girls? After all, he was 24 years old.
Well, he had spoken a couple of times. He saw a couple of girls pass by that worked in the post office. He said they were good-looking girls, you know, but that's about as far as he would talk about girls, you know.
You ever see him with a girl?
The only girl that I saw him with was this Teresa Graciano, you know.
Socially, I mean. You ever see him with a girl?
No. Only, you know, on the coffee break, he'd be sitting with and talking with the girl, you know. And I don't know what they talked about or anything.
I want to do this one little more time over again, just get like that. Feel like that didn't happen. Okay? I don't want to ask. Hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Tell me, what do you know about David Berkowitz and what your relationship was and all like that?
Well, when he first started working for the post office, the foreman told me to break him in and show him the breakdown of the mail, the processing of the collection, and like we worked together for about 3 months. He worked in my section, and he was a good worker. He was quiet, you know. We used to go to coffee together, and he would discuss he liked fish.
Frank Elliott, I'm sorry, Mike Elliott, M-I-A-M-I-K-E-E-L-L-I-O-T-T. Mike Elliott, 2 L's, 2 T's. Tell me what you knew about David Berkowitz.
Well, I didn't know much about him before he had come to the post office. All I knew about that he told me he liked to go fishing, he liked to read a lot of books, and that's about, you know.
Did he seem strange, weird? Did he seem at all...
No, he didn't. He seemed calm, cool, and collective all the time when we were working. He did the job, what he had to do. When it was time for his break, he went on a break. We discussed things that he liked to do, and that's about it. Yeah.
What was your reaction when you learned that David Berkowitz was perhaps the son of Sam?
Yeah, well, I saw his picture on the Daily News, the final edition. And they didn't say anything about the Bronx post office. It just said that he worked for the post office. And when I saw the face, I said, I know him from somewhere, but I didn't place the post office. I said, I seen him somewhere in the Bronx. But then when the post came out and they said the Bronx post office, then I said, that's the guy. I worked with the guy, and I broke the man in when he first started working for the post office.
And on all that time, you didn't notice that there was anything strange or different about this fellow?
No. Nothing whatsoever, nothing different. No, just he came in, he did his work, and he went home. He used to like to eat hero sandwiches. He went out on his break to buy sandwiches, come back, and he'd sit down. But most of the time, like, he did sit by himself. Like the first couple of months, he sat with me, but after that, he stayed in the corner by himself with his books, reading. He looked like he was always deep into the books. He looked like a very studious person. And I was really shocked to know that he was the guy. It's very hard to believe.
Bring it, cut away. First he's trying to talk you out of it, right?
Let's do this.
Ain't that pitiful.
Let's do it.
Tell me one more time, how did you know this guy?
Well, when he started working for the post office, they put him in my section.
Talk to me. Look at me.
When he was working he worked in my section when he first started working in the post office, and I broke him in. The foreman told me to show him the breakdown on the collection. You know, the mail coming into the post office from all areas of the Bronx, and like he was.
Got it. I just need about 5 seconds of this. Okay, tell me one more time. What you thought about this guy? Okay, come on a bit.
Well, I thought he was a quiet guy. I never would think. I would never think in a million years that this guy is son of Sam. Like, he was always so quiet. He did his work. He came to work. He had his breaks. He would sit down and he sat with me the first couple of months of training while I was showing him what to do, but after that, he broke away and he sat in a corner reading books, and that's about it. He would see me in the hallway, he would nod to me, but that's about it.
As the condition of one of the killer's latest 2 victims worsened, the parents of Stacy Moskowitz were summoned to the hospital. This evening, Miss Moskowitz, shown here as she was taken into the hospital yesterday, died of massive brain damage. Her date, Robert Violante, will live. He said he got a good look at the killer, but may never be able to identify him because Violante may have been blinded. New York's Mayor Beam directed that 100 more policemen be added to what's become one of the biggest manhunts in the history of this city.
This would, in essence, put approximately a total of 300 of police personnel on a constant full-time basis just for this investigation.
In Brooklyn, where the latest shooting occurred, detectives drew diagrams of the area and places where people may have caught a glimpse of the killer escaping. Other detectives canvassed door to door, looking for new witnesses or re-interviewing ones they'd already talked to.
According to the witnesses that we've talked to over the past 24 hours, he's a male white, 25 to 35, approximately 5'7" to 5'10", a stocky build, and he had light disheveled hair.
But police still have nothing they'd be willing to describe as a hot lead in the case. In fact, they've been able to rule out about a half-dozen suspects they had previously because all were accounted for and none were in the area of the shooting early Sunday morning. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
New York began feeling relief at 1:30 this morning when Mayor Beam announced the arrest.
I'm very pleased to announce that the people of the city of New York can rest easy this morning because of the fact that the police have captured a man whom they believe to be the son of Sam.
John Deal, whose girlfriend, Christine Freund, was murdered in January, said the arrest was good news for everybody.
I feel very good about it, that everybody can walk, or go out with their dates safe again now. Some of us had to, suffer through this.
At the Brooklyn home of Stacy Moskowitz, the last person murdered, her mother praised the police, but added that the family's life will never be the same.
It's a very difficult thing to resume anything normal afterward, as far as I'm concerned anyway. You just can't pick up nothing pieces when there's no pieces to pick up.
New Yorkers saw the arrest as a release for New York's young women and their parents.
I was getting a little worried since I have short length brown hair and everything. But now I feel much better.
Oh, I feel much safer walking the streets of New York. Much safer, I can go out at night and go to the discotheques and just feel better about it. I don't have to worry that my parents were very worried that I couldn't go out at night. I was always home, went to sleep early.
I think it's great. Now I feel so much safer about going out at night.
I'm very happy. I have daughters.
So after almost a year of tension and fear, this city's young people and their parents are beginning to relax. Lee McCarthy, NBC News, New York.
Berkowitz was brought to court in an armored van for his own safety. Inside, in a unique proceeding, 3 judges from 3 different boroughs of New York City shuttled through a single courtroom to hear Berkowitz plead guilty to 6 Son of Sam murders. Berkowitz spoke without emotion. At one point he said quietly, "I'm an excellent shot." Relatives of the victim were there, the mother of the last victim, Stacy Moskowitz, her father and young sister, Donna DeMasi, who survived an attack, still wearing a neck brace where the bullet hit, and the parents of the killer's first victim, Donna Lauria. As Berkowitz answered questions about the shooting, Jerry Moskowitz sagged, leaning his head against the courtroom wall. His surviving daughter, Ricky, wept. And there was one surprise, an accusation that Berkowitz was also an arsonist. A prosecutor said Berkowitz kept a diary logging 2,000 fires he claimed to have set in the years before his capture. After court, some parents were too upset to speak.
I only felt that it was, well, my daughter knew me.
Other parents were sorry New York has no death penalty.
I would have liked more to have happened to him. The electric chair, for instance. That should come back.
He still don't deserve to live. I still have to support him for being where he is today and where he'll spend the rest of his life. I'll never bring my daughter back. I'll never bring all the other kids back either, but that's all I can say.
When Berkowitz is sentenced in 2 weeks, he could get up to life in prison, but would be eligible for parole after 30 years. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York. This is the man police believe to be the Son of Sam, the .44 caliber killer who has killed 6 and wounded 7 in a string of attacks over the last 13 months. He was arrested outside his apartment in Yonkers, New York at 10:30 last night and brought to police headquarters about midnight. He is David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker who lived alone. He was smiling as he was brought in. Detectives displayed a .44 caliber pistol found in Berkowitz's car. The police lab says its tests indicate this was the gun used in the most recent Son of Sam slaying.
Ballistics section has just called and told us that the .44 caliber gun recovered tonight has been tested and the bullets match the bullets recovered from Stacy Moskowitz.
New York's Mayor Beam appeared after midnight.
I'm very pleased to announce that the people of the city of New York can rest easy this morning because of the fact that the police have captured a man whom they believe to be the Son of Sam.
It was Berkowitz's car that led police to him. It had been ticketed for being parked by a fire hydrant on the night of the most recent murder, just a few blocks from the murder scene. Routinely following up the ticket, police found the car in Yonkers and noticed a .45 caliber machine gun inside and an envelope addressed in the killer's style of handwriting.
He was apprehended. He was advised of his rights.
And he resisted.
Advised that he was under arrest, advised of his rights. No, he was resigned to what appeared to be his fate.
Did he make any admissions?
He made a statement along, well, you got me.
1 and 3, right?
Besides the .44 pistol and the .45 machine gun, police seized a lot of ammunition at Berkowitz's apartment, along with a folder of press clippings with a poem written on the outside. The suspect doesn't bear much resemblance to any of the recent artist conceptions used by police, but one sketch drawn over a year ago does bear some resemblance to this Polaroid picture taken of the suspect on this night of his arrest. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.